Hey, what's up, nerds? Paul at Radio Free Hammer Hall, and we just got all of our points updates and the FAQ for the General's Handbook 2019, and I wanted to go through just the changes that were made to Skaven, because I think they were really interesting, and I think this does not fix Skaven at all. So, the big one off the top is that the Warp Lightning Vortex range got shrunken from a 26-inch deployment to a 13-inch deployment. That doesn't fix that thing. The issue is the power and the amount of mortal wounds that it puts out. You can still stretch that across the board and hit your opponent with it turn one. A lot of times I was deploying it closer into the middle of the battlefield anyway. So, especially on deployments where you're 18 inches from your opponent, which is like almost half of them now, that doesn't change the problems that the Warp Lightning Vortex creates. So, part of me is happy that the Warp Lightning Vortex is still really good. I'm disappointed for the meta because Skaven are going to be just like wrecking house at tournaments still. So points change wise, Gray Seers went up 20 points to 140. Screaming Bell went up 20 points. Furnace went up 20 points. All of those pretty in line and expected with what my predictions on that were. Vermin Lord Corruptor, that was a little bit of a surprise to me. That went up 20 points to 280. The Vermin Lord Warbringer, also a little bit of a surprise. That went up to 280. Although the Triple Death Frenzy is really powerful. So, that's kind of like Skaven's answer to the activation wars. They don't really participate. They just die and fight you on their way down. The Vermin Lord Warp Seer went up 40 points to 300. So that's one of the more aggressive changes that they made out of all of these. That going up, 40 points it's a 15.5% change. Gray Seer going up 20 was like a 16% change. And I think that going up less than that would have been too light of a touch. Like the Gray Seer is really good. Plague Monks went up 10 points on their base and 40 points on their horde. So they went up to 80 and 280. So that's a pretty chunky increase there as well. That's about what I predicted that it was going to be. Definitely the 80 points per 10 was definitely my prediction. I forgot what exactly I was thinking that the horde was going to be, but probably about the 280 as well. So a couple of surprises. Rattling guns went down 20 points, so they are now a hot bargain at 60 points. I'm glad I own two. That's all I can say. Those things are sweet. They are just, to make the mental comparison, would you rather have a rattling gun or a squad of 5 acolytes? Now that's a real choice to make. Plus you can give them all of the usual buffs. So that's super cool. Storm Vermin also went down. They went down 20 points for 10. So they are now 120 and 450 for the Horde of 40. I like Storm Vermin a lot more now. In fact, I had been sort of on the fence personally between Plague Monks and Storm Vermin before. I think now I personally like Storm Vermin better out of, just a Skaven build. And I think Plague Monks may have just gotten priced out of Nurgle. Just because it's hard to fit all of that in. Nurgle is starving for points most of the time. So overall impression here, I think this doesn't really change Skaven. I always had a lot of slack points in my list where I was kind of like plugging in extra stuff. So what am I going to do now? I mean, maybe instead of running an Arch Warlock, I run a Bombardier instead, and boom, there's the rest of my points. Um, the other one here that I did not notate, well, there are a couple of other minor changes, or there's one other minor change. The Hell Pit Abomination went up. Um, so what? Um, the all of the engine covens went down, which I think was a really good move. I don't think that still makes the engine covens competitive because they're still predominantly just giving you reroll ones to hit, which a lot of these things do anyway, or you give them more warp power when you need it. So I'm not that excited about the engine covens. I'm not that excited about the Hell Pit Abomination that nobody played with to begin with. Um, personally, for lists that I would build, I think the Storm Vermin going down covers a lot of the points increases that I'd be getting in other places. So I'm not really too worried about it. I feel pretty good about this in terms of being a Skaven player. In terms of looking at the overall metagame and what's going to happen going forward, this doesn't change Skaven, guys. I don't know what, like, I understand where GW is coming from on making their changes. Um, this doesn't fix Skaven. Like, period. This doesn't fix Skaven. It doesn't fix the problem. Like, Plague Monks to, not be viable need to be a lot more than 280 for 40. Like, they should probably be like 100 for 10. Um, but looking at all of the other changes that GW made to um, other armies, this is exactly in line with how they changed the other armies. And I did not. Um, this is basically just in line with my general expectations and 100% correct on a number of my individual point predictions. Um, in fact, most of them. I'm excited that we did not get a change to Clan Rats. We didn't get a change to the Bombardier or the Engineer. I really expected the Bombardier or Engineer to go up. Because they're really good. The Arch Warlock didn't go up. I think it's probably still aggressively costed at 160. They could have probably used to bump that to at least 170 or 180 maybe. He's still really good. Screaming Bell at 220 still all day. I think I'm probably going to build a second Screaming Bell because turns out 2 towers is actually a really good build. I was already kind of on the fence personally about the power of the Warp Seer, and I think him going to 300 just kind of makes me go, yeah, I'd rather have a Screaming Bell. So, I mean, the Screaming Bell, especially with double of them, like it's just so much damage at range, especially to MSU armies. It can give you casting buffs. It can randomly 1 in 36 times summon a Vermin Lord for you. I I I think that may be the way to go. So not a lot really changing for Skaven. It's a lot of shuffling points around and maybe changing some selections a little bit. My this personally makes me just drop Plague Monks, because I hated Plague Monks to begin with, because I really hate rolling out all those dice. Like that play experience to me is just so horrible. And I would rather, like, if I can just take Storm Vermin and Storm Vermin are good enough, then I don't need Plague Monks. Like, Plague Monks are so over the top powerful that, like, Storm Vermin basically get the same job done. And I'm just I'm not worried about the difference personally. Like, I've used both, and like I would rather just have the quick rolling and reliability of the Storm Vermin. I may even buy more at this point. Um, but this is just getting into random editorializing about list building. I don't know that Plague Monks are necessarily, like, them going up 40 points for the Horde. That really hurts the lists that were running multiple blocks of them. If you're running one block of them, then it's not a big deal. Um, if you were running like all Plague Monks, if you were basically running a Pestilence army, you're probably losing like a whole block of Plague Monks as a result of this. So, um, I guess in the really abusive spammy builds, it got better. In um, the more mid-rangey kind of builds, I think everything stayed pretty much the same, and that's kind of where I liked Skaven to begin with. Was, you know, a more mixed arms Skaven army. So I'm happy about the changes, and I'm not happy about the changes. From the perspective of being a Skaven player, I'm very happy with what changed because it basically doesn't change my army. On the downside, it, it doesn't fix them being like a top tier army. In the change to the Warp Lightning Vortex, I don't think really changes much at all. If anything, it makes you cast it like on turn 2 instead. Or the other option that is really hanging out there, that I will give credit to Mr. Dakadez for noting this. Like, you can just skitter leap a caster closer to your opponent, and then they can cast the spell. Seems good, right? Like, especially if it's like a Grey Seer powering it out, or a an Arch Warlock powering it out, to get that casting buff, or not the. Actually, what am I saying? You can't power it out with an Arch Warlock because they can't take that spell. But if it's a regular Grey Seer, they can just power that spell out on 3 dice, then skitter leap your Arch Warlock over close to your enemy, and then just still drop it where you were going to drop it before. And if you put your gnaw holes in the right place, then not much happening. Like, you're still getting the +1 to cast. This army is super not fixed, guys, but it's going to be a really good year of playing this army for me, that's for sure. Anyway, just initial reactions. We'll see where the metagame goes, but sweet Jesus, this does not fix the Skaven problem. And there's going to be a lot of complaining on the internet about this. Not wait to see. It is going to be just it's going to be a glorious fire on Twitter. I'll talk to you all later.